Okay. Hey, I'm Cameron Kennedy, and I'm going to be talking about the bucket sorting method today. So, to get stuff started, I just wanted to mention about what the bucket sorting method was itself. So, it's a pretty simple sorting method. It doesn't have that much to it, but you can change it so it has so much more to it. But what it is you start off with your array, and then you sort the whatever you have in your array into smaller arrays, which are called your buckets. And then from this, you sort each bucket from high to low or low to high, whichever one you're trying to do. And then you put it all together at the end, and you now have your organized array. So now, like looking at the picture, you can see this happening because you have your array up here of numbers, and you sort them into buckets of predetermined number lengths. Like I have this one like 0 to 9, then it's 10 to 19, so on and so on. And then you look at each individual bucket and you sort them. So like this one would be 3, 9, and then this one would be 21, 25, 29, and so on and so on for these three. And then after you do all that, you can add them all together, and then you would now have an organized list from 3 to 49. So it's pretty simple again. And the cool thing about it is that it is a stable list, meaning that like if we had an extra 9 at the end and we have this 9 here, when our list is organized, it would be 3, 9, 9. And this one will always come before the one that we'd thrown on the end of the list because they keep their values, like their place values, which is something good to know when you're using this for your own things. So now moving on, I just wanted to show off some pseudocode before we get into actual code. And again, it's pretty simple, so there's not much to talk about here. You start off by making your arrays, all the buckets that you need, and you make sure to grab the original length of your array, because you're going to need to use that later while putting the values into the new lists. So in these two steps is just making sure that the new arrays are ready for the variables to be put into them. And then the second one is the actual moving of the variables from your first list to your buckets. And then the final two steps are sorting your buckets, which is here, and then recombining your buckets. So it's a pretty simple concept. And this picture here is just a more like technical look at what the bucket sorted method entails. So now I just wanted to show off some real code. This is just a picture of all that I have, but I'm going to be showing off some actual code. But I just wanted to point out quickly that I'm using the algorithm IOStream and vector includes. This is just to make it so that the sorting itself is actually easier and I didn't have to like type as much code just because they have pre-built in ones. So pulling my code onto the window now, you can see it's exactly the same. Now if we hit run, it'll build it for me, and we can see that this list is now sorted. It was pretty quick. It was a small one, but it was still pretty quick nonetheless. So I like this method. It's pretty good at sorting numbers especially. So now I just wanted to come back to the presentation and show off the individual parts and talk about them more. So this is the actual like bucket sort itself that I have put into place. And just from looking at the pseudocode, it follows the same exact steps of, we create our arrays, we get all the arrays ready and put all the variables into them here. And then we actually do the sorting here. And again, in both of these, I used functions that I got from my includes just to make it simpler. And then after that, we add all of them back together into the original array and you get your sorted list. So, and then this is just to show off that it actually did sort the array as this was what was put into it. And if you look down here, you can see that it is now sorted, which is pretty cool. Now talking about the runtimes, I just wanted to mention like the best, average, and the worst cases for each of them. And you won't really run into the best case, and hopefully you don't run into the worst case because it's a pretty specific avenue to go down. But the best case, you're never really going to run into it because it only happens when you have one bucket and one variable to sort. Because at that point, you wouldn't really be sorting anything considering that it's already sorted because there's only one. So, unfortunately, we won't be getting that much. But the average case, the one that you'll see more often, it looks a little complex, but it's fine. And it's basically n plus n squared divided by k plus k, with K equaling your number of buckets. And the way you get this is if you do a sum notation of the best case to infinity, you get n plus n squared divided by K, which isn't the same as this, but the extra K comes into play because you have to add all of the arrays back together at the end, meaning that you have to throw in the plus K because the amount of buckets you have does affect the equation for the average case. So the worst case, hopefully you don't run into this that much. It's when you only have one bucket that's being used. So like if you have 20 like numbers in your list, and let's say like you're sorting from like 0 to 50, but they all happen to fall under the 0 to 9, like in the picture shown earlier, like it's like 0 to 9 is the first bucket. All 20 fall under 0 to 9, meaning that you would have the worst case runtime now. So, but again, that's pretty uncommon, I feel like, to run into, as long as you can change the parameters of your buckets, because you can just go back and change it. So instead of being like 0 to 9, it'd be like 0 to 4, then 5 to 9. So you'd split them up in half at least, or you could do it even more individually if you know what the lists are going to be. So hopefully you won't run into the worst case. That's just a way to avoid it. So I just wanted to finish this off by talking about some unique things that I found pretty interesting about the bucket sorting method. And to me, the things that stuck out were the different variants of it. Because since it's such a like basic design and concept to sort stuff out, and it's been around for so long, people have been able to change it and redo it to fit whatever needs they have. And they've come up with some pretty cool ones or pretty adaptive ones. So like the first one is the postman sort. And the postman sort was made for the United States Post Office. So, and it's still used to this day. So like something so simple as the bucket sort has been blown up to help a whole country. You know, that's pretty cool to me. And they did this by, they changed it so that it takes in your address, like all the parts of your address that you have to like write out like an envelope, all the different sections, they're sorted by that. And like this guy here is using the bucket sort method when he's sorting that mail to be delivered. It's at probably it's at the lower end of the chain of things, but it's still used throughout the whole chain. So the other unique one, this one's a little more situational, is the shuffle sort method. This one's pretty cool to me because instead of just doing one split on your array from like your main array to your buckets, you now do two splits. So like you take your main array, you take the first 1/8 of it and you split it off into a second array. So now you have your two arrays that are each split into the buckets. So like you have your two arrays, the buckets, and then after it's all sorted, they go back to the two split up arrays. And they're sorted from highest to lowest, exactly the same as it would have been if it was just one. But you add the two arrays together at the end one more time, and you now have a semi-shuffled list, which if you're trying to sort stuff from like lowest to highest, you wouldn't want to use this. But if you're playing like a card game, like an online card game, or like you're trying to design one yourself, you would probably want to use this method or a more complex version of this because it shuffles your deck for you. You know, it's a pretty simple method to shuffle a deck, which is pretty versatile for card games. So those are just two things I found really unique about the bucket sort method. And I hope that you guys were able to learn something. And I hope you guys can use this in the future if you ever need it. Have a nice day.